Let me show you how I painted these little animals and birds in ink and watercolour on wooden boards and then added metal leaf. They're for an art show this weekend. Which is your favourite? For these paintings, I'm just using little cradled boards. A cradled board, piece of wood with that round to stop it warping. And I've coated it with 3 layers of watercolour ground. Watercolour ground is like an absorbent gesso, and it allows really any surface to take watercolour to behave a little bit more like, oh dear, I haven't given enough space here, have I? Drawing and talking is quite a tricky combination. So yeah, the watercolour ground allows it to behave a little bit more like watercolour paper. It's different, but it will accept ink and watercolour, water media really beautifully. I'm using a watercolour pencil here just to put a little outline of my lovely barn owl. Make sure I've got that face broad enough. So when I put water on top, this pencil is just going to disappear. Doesn't have to be perfect because as we go along we can adapt. I have got a Uniball, this is a rollerball pen, and it's got pigment ink in it. You could use a fibre tip pen. You will find the surface is really rough on fibre tips. So if they're quite precious to you, then I would use a rollerball instead. Now on paper this ink becomes permanent straight away, but it's just a feature of this sort of surface that if you put water on quickly like that, it still moves, and then when it dries it is permanent. So I can put watercolour over this once it's fully dry, but as long as I'm pretty quick with a bit of water, I can let it run and move. And just by adding water, did that little eye, and just by adding water I've pulled away some feathers, and already I think that's looking lovely. Now I would like to try and lift a little of the dark at the bottom of the eye, so I've got a damp brush and I'm lifting, wiping off on a bit of tissue just to get that soft highlight. So little water, pulling out those lovely feathery marks, and I'm coming down here and starting to put a bit of the shadow around the beak. Do exactly the same over here. Save that beautiful highlight, and I'm just sort of roughly filling it in, and then straight away using my damp brush to move that ink. If I was doing this on paper, I'd need to use Indian ink and paint it in the same way. It would be a lot wetter, takes a little bit longer to dry than these pens on paper. But on this surface, whether I used a little canvas maybe and prepared it, or one of these little wooden boards, then you end up with these lovely flows of ink, and we're basically doing an underdrawing, and we will then come in with watercolour on top to finish it off. So again, I want to just pick up with my damp clean brush a little bit of light, soft light at the bottom. Now this is a bit outliney. You can even go back in with your pen into the wet and drop in more ink. It may stop your pen working for a little while if it's too wet, but it's probably going to be okay. And you can just drop in a little more ink there to darken things down. So it's almost drawing painting combined, and then we can come down to that gorgeous beak. Well, not gorgeous if you're a mouse, but gorgeous for us to see. Quickly blend that edge so that it's not just an outline. To get that beak in, we need more shadow under here. Putting that ink down, pulling it away in the direction of those feathers that are on the disc of the face. Lots of variety, lots of water so that we get these lovely happy marks. The ink will follow the water. Pick up with your brush and drop it into the damp areas to sort of go for a little wander and walk and create all sorts of lovely feathery marks. So say over here, just a tiny smidgen. I'm stroking those lovely feathers back towards the centre of the face, putting the edge of those feathers in with lines and then blending them. I don't think I want to blend them all, so some are a bit more edgy. If they've gone too much, I can always go back and put some random lines in like that. Let's just get the end of that beak a little sharper, because if there's one thing I know, is an owl's beak is sharp and dangerous if you are a small rodent. Might be nice to have some more specific marks. So while this is damp, I can scribble in there and it will just move. If it's too liney, I can blend it out. I find this a very fast way of working. And what happens is this ink underlayer does all the heavy lifting for us. We'll put colour on in a moment, but that colour doesn't have much to do. It's just bringing a little emotion and interest to the piece, because the form has been done with the ink. I hope you can see how that watercolour pencil just dissolves in, goes away. It's only there as a little guide for you. So do squint at your work. And I am thinking I haven't got these discs round here dark enough. Don't be frightened to use lots of water, because when you've used the water, it will travel and give you all sorts of beautiful marks. Right, if you want to do even more marks, a little bit of salt is so your friend. Sprinkle it in to damp wash and then sit back and see what it does. Let me show you, say, on this little wren that I've done in exactly the same way. And these beautiful little marks, these little snowflakes, little feathery marks, are all down to the power of a sprinkle of salt. And I'm going to let this dry. In true television fashion, here is one I did earlier, which is dry. I'm just going to grab watercolours, very basic set of watercolours, and decide what colours I want to do. Am I going to be literal? This is going to be basically white with lovely sandy colours, or am I going to go wild with my colours? Well, I've got two of these, so I think I will do one of each. So I've grabbed a little bit of yellow ochre. And now that this ink is totally dry, it's waterproof, so I can go over the top. The ink underneath shines through our transparent watercolour. That was a bit of yellow ochre. Let's grab a bit of something a little bit brighter. This is cadmium yellow. I'll come back maybe with some burnt sienna or some Indian red is maybe quite nice. And just mix those on top so I could emphasize some of that coloration around the eye. Don't worry about the edges, say here, because I'm going to put gold leaf around the side. So if I go out, I can always cover that if it goes too far. I add a little bit of my yellow ochre, makes a really nice purpley brown, and we can start using that for more of the shadow. Again, we're trying to stroke the bird in the direction of the feathers. So while it's wet, we can go back in with our pen and just amend things should we need to. Now I'd just like to do a little bit of an indication of the spots and markings. So mixing that up, loading my brush and then tapping my finger. And I think that is the paint layer done. In this little pot, you really don't need much, I have gold size. Gold size is a special glue we use for gold leaf, and you can see mine is brown. I added a little bit of watercolour just to tint it, and the difference that makes is that I can see where I've put it, because if it was white on a white surface, I get ever so confused. So with gold size, it never fully dries. It only ever dries to be as sticky as a post-it note, and therefore it can grab the gold leaf without making it go mushy. I use Polyvine metal size. It dries in 15 minutes. It's very reasonably priced. All the cleanup is with water, so that's why I use it. What I would like to do is a few spots of gold as well in the bird. So just as I did with watercolour, I'm loading my brush up and tapping it to make little dots. These little dots do take longer to dry because they're a bit thicker than the background. If you want a gold dot in a specific place rather than randomly, of course you could always use the end and just put a specific gold dot in a specific place. The one I showed you is dry enough now, so actually I'm going to paint this, so you're going to get two for the price of one. And I thought this would be fun to do in non-real colours. Our blue owl is dry enough for me to just tap in a few markings. I am going to do silver leaf around this one just for a bit of fun. So this is the metal size that I was talking about. I am going to tint this blue to go under silver, and what you'll find is the underpainting can influence the final colour of the gold leaf or silver leaf or metal leaf that you're using, simply because it's if the metal leaf breaks up, some of this colour might show through. You get sort of microscopic little breaks in the metal leaf, which are natural. You can always fill them in if you don't like them. But that underpainting just slightly shows through, and it will give a very cool bluey tone to the silver leaf here. Whereas if I use the same sort of warm brown that I used on the other owl, I don't think that would go very well with the silver. Metal leaf has rather an intimidating reputation, and yes, look, it can stick to you. It's because I'm so hot today, it's just sticking everywhere. But actually it's really easy to use. Once your gold size has dried to be, say, sticky as a post-it note, you just place it. I'll put a piece of paper over the top just to tap it down. It is really sticking to me because, say, I'm hot and sticky. You do need to shut all the windows, turn off fans, air conditioning, anything like that, because otherwise you'll end up with a gold sort of snowstorm. I wouldn't usually do it like this, but it's not usually 34 degrees in my studio. Some people use cotton gloves when they're handling gold leaf. Given what's going on today, that would probably be very sensible. I am making a right mess. Luckily, this is just the edge, and you might look at this and thinking, she is making a right mess, but don't worry. This is going to be a great illustration of how once it's in place, it's very easy to tidy up. But take a soft brush. When you have placed it, you can just gently brush off the excess. If there are any gaps, like there, grab a little bit left over, tap it into place, and that will just sort that out. Let me show, I mean, this side's so messy because it was sticking to me. But don't worry, look how forgiving it is. We're just brushing off the excess. Still got a beautiful gold finish. We can press little bits of leftover into any gaps and it's fine. Little gentle circular movement and that cleans that off. This is imitation. If it were real gold leaf, I would be not handling it like this. It's very expensive. It's slightly more fragile than this as well. So if you've not used gold leaf before, use imitation. Get used to it before you go on to the good stuff. And there's our little gold owl after it's been pretty much cleaned up. Maybe a few more bits to go. Once that's dried fully, we need to varnish it. I like to use a UV varnish. I would use a gloss one because otherwise you'll take the shine off that gold leaf. But something that protects against UV is no bad thing. And do it outside and maybe do sort of 4 coats or so, just nice thin coats to make sure it's all protected because the gold leaf will tarnish. Before you varnish it, don't forget to sign. You might want to sign on the back, of course, but I will sign here. The sort of frame, though, that I like to use is one of these little tray frames. Let me just pop it in. And so I get them slightly oversized, so we've got this little shadow around it. And don't you think that just sets it off nicely? It just gives it a little more substance. And I think that looks really pretty. So it's a case of fixing that in, putting string on the back and hanging it on your wall. I have found some white cotton gloves. I'm hoping that'll stop the leaf sticking to my hands. The size is dried to be that tacky level that I was looking for. And now I can apply the silver. So silver leaf actually doesn't tarnish. Imitation silver leaf doesn't tarnish, whereas real silver leaf does. Real gold leaf doesn't tarnish because real gold doesn't, but imitation does. So worth knowing your, just pop that on the side. Yeah, really worth knowing what your metals will do, working out what's going on so that you can get the effect that you want. Oh, these gloves make sense. They are doing what is required. So a lot of people do wear these sorts of gloves when they're leafing, simply because the oils from your skin can tarnish the leaf. Now, I don't worry because I don't believe in having perfect leafing. I think perfection is very much overrated. But you saw the mess I was getting in because I was sticky. Now I can handle this without a problem. Just going to push that into place with my soft brush. and then take off the excess. There's a lot of excess here, and I'm going to use the excess for the edges. And now with that circular motion, we can just remove the excess. You might be thinking, why doesn't she silver leaf first and then just paint on top? And if you're using acrylic or oil, you could absolutely do that. But with watercolour, watercolour will not go on top. To grab an acrylic marker, and I could take some of the colour into the background and vary the size of dots, make them look a little more random, and that can be really nice to do. I'll put them side by side so you can see what they look like. So same owl, different colourway, different metal leaf. Which is your favourite?